Good. Okay. The HEA page, put it on the Facebook page, and then we're live in about 3 minutes.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Rabbi. Here. Net. There we are. All right. I'm going to go mute, Rabbi, and then you just tell me where you want me to go on the page.
Okay.
All right, Rabbi, anytime you're ready, we're all live.
Okay, everyone. Good to have you all. We are studying Pirkei Avot together. And I thought we'd be maybe a little bit more interactive today rather than kind of 30 minutes of my talking. So let's go through these two Mishnayot that I have prepared for you. And then maybe I'll stop a little bit with each of these Mishnayot so that we can talk about them a little bit more so than we did in the last couple of weeks. So we are on Mishnah 6. You see it there? See the 6 on the middle of the page, basically, right on the right. It's Yehoshua ben Parachia. Okay, so here we go. Yehoshua ben Parachia benitai ha'ar beli kiblu mehem. Yehoshua ben Parachia, that he's going to be speaking first, and I'll talk about him in just a second. Aseh lecha rav uknei lecha chaver v'hevidan et kol ha'adam lecha zchut. This is very well known piece of Pirkei Avot, perhaps even some of the most well known, because of the kind of the value, underlying value that is expressed here, which is so relevant and has remained relevant. Yehoshua ben Parachia probably studied Torah and created these kinds of themes roughly 200 BCE or so. That is the time that the Mishnah started being put together. And of course, Pirkei Avot is a Mishnah, body of Mishnah that is in the larger category of the Talmud in Nezikin. And Pirkei Avot is very different from anything else you'll see in the Talmud. And it is studied widely because of values that it expresses. So that's Yehoshua ben Parachia. He fled to Egypt. The king during during Yehoshua ben Parachia's conversations under King Yanai, and King Yanai was an evil king, according to Jewish tradition. Yehoshua had to leave town, essentially, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So Yanai was understood to be evil because he wiped out the Perushim. The Perushim were the proto-rabbis of the Mishnah, right? Just before the Mishnah started to be put together by Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. And what did Yanai do? All of those Pharisees, which again are the just before the rabbis of the Mishnah started to write, Yanai destroyed them, killed them, and there was a reason for that. Yanai was a Sadducee, who were the mortal enemies of the Pharisees or the proto-rabbis. Why were they enemies? Because the Sadducees read the Torah literally, right? So regardless of what the Torah says, it was taken as kind of the gospel, and there was no more explanations of the Torah with the Sadducees. Pharisees were very different. I'll talk about Pharisees in just a second. But the Sadducees, if it said sacrifice this thing, you had to sacrifice it. If you had a rebellious child, you had to actually take them out of the city and stone them to death. These are all things that the Pharisees or the proto-rabbis looked at and said, look, we can't kill rebellious children. It's just not possible. It's murder in a certain sense. And the Torah must understand this in some other ways. So that the Pharisees looked at the rebellious child, which is right in the Torah, and said, the rebellious child, if what does a child mean? He has to be this exact age. It also talked about the child being a glutton. What did a glutton, how much did they have to eat during a certain period of time? Essentially, what the Pharisees did was understand difficult portions of the Torah and reinterpreted them. So this rebellious child, it'd be virtually impossible to have a rebellious child according to the Pharisees, even though the Sadducees would take that literally. And the Sadducees, because they took all of this so literally, when the temple was destroyed, they disappeared. Because much of what the Torah talks about are what the priests did in the tabernacle and later in the temple. So as soon as that sacrificial system was no longer applied after the destruction of the temple, the Sadducees essentially had nothing to do, and they disappeared from history. Where the Pharisees were able to reinterpret things in the Torah, so that they would actually be able to continue leadership of the Jewish people. It wasn't necessary for them to have a temple in order for them to interpret Torah and to stay together as a Jewish people. Okay, because of that, because they were flexible in that way, they ended up becoming the leaders of the Jewish people moving forward. So Yanai was evil because he became a Sadducee, a sworn enemy of the Pharisees or the proto-rabbis. He obviously lost all power, and the Sadducees lost all credibility when the temple was destroyed. Okay, let's take a look at what Yehoshua ben Parachia actually said. Aseh lecha Rav, make for yourself a teacher, right? Rav, rabbi, make for yourself a teacher, uknei lecha chaver, and acquire for yourself. And there's a kind of a business understanding of that word kne, because kone means to buy. So uknei lecha chaver probably has some kind of economic component to it, some financial component to it. We'll see that, what we're talking about there in a minute. V'hevi dan et kol adam l'chaf zchut, and judge everybody, judge, dan et hakol, judge everybody, every man, ha'adam, in his favor, favorably, right? Give them essentially the benefit of the doubt. That's what l'chaf zchut means. Give every person, or judge every person, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so appoint thyself a teacher. It says in rabbinic literature that can mean a teacher that actually knows more than you, so you'd be able to benefit from his wisdom and knowledge. Or it also could mean a teacher that doesn't know as much as you, but might take a look at the same verse in the Torah or earlier in the Talmud, that can look at things a little bit different than you. Might be more knowledgeable in Torah, but that doesn't mean you look at everything correctly, or that your understanding can't be refined by having someone else there. So appoint yourself a teacher, could be any person. Everybody looks at things differently. You can learn from every person. We'll see Mishnah about that a little bit later on. But appoint yourself a teacher, because you can't do Jewish study by yourself. We're talking about chavruta. That is studying with one or two or three other people that can look at things differently, will have their own opinion on things. And that is a benefit to you in terms of your own learning. So appoint for thyself a teacher, right? And acquire for thyself a companion, right? This is a chaver, right? Uknei lecha chaver, also from chavruta, a friend, person that you can study with. And the acquiring, kind of a financial overtone to that, even if it costs money to find yourself a companion. I don't know, costs of travel, right? Or having to compensate your companion in some way, your chaver in some way, even if it costs you money. That's the knei lecha, buy yourself a companion. Even if it costs you money to find somebody to study with, that's what you need to do. And then it says, hevi dan et kol ha'adam l'chaf zchut, judge every person with the scale weighted in that person's favor, right? Judging everybody, giving them all the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about knei lecha chaver. I mentioned before, it's better to study with somebody else. Oh, there's another reason. When you study with somebody else, or you get to know somebody else as a chaver, and not only do you study better and more deeply, but that chaver can see you going off the right track of behavior, right? If you're tending towards sinfulness, or if you let your eyes lead you astray, a chaver can talk to you about it, can say you are going on the wrong path. You've got to clean up your act. And they can do that in a kind of advice way and in a confidential way. That's the benefit of having a chaver. They can help you. They can give you what they call in the Mishnah and the Talmud give you tochecha, which means a rebuke, right? And that kind of person is the one that you would listen to probably more than anyone else, because they're a chaver. You know they care about you. And this rebuke is for your benefit. That's the benefit of having a chaver, somebody that's close to you, and somebody that you know is not going to go around blabbing about it, right? That Bruce Dollin did this bad, did that bad. No, this is all an internal thing. My chaver would tell me, you got to straighten up your act, clean up your act, and it would be confidential, and it will be very influential on the person that has the chaver. Okay, so interesting to note, Rashi is a commentator in the Middle Ages. He says, and this is kind of off the beaten track, but he says buying books, because they're a chaver, right? There's something that has potential give and take between you and a Jewish study. So it's a little bit, I doubt it, but Rashi mentions it, and Rashi is a very important commentator. So you can look, perhaps, Knei lecha chaver, you're buying it anyway, knei, buy for yourself a chaver, a friend, because Jewish books are your friend in certain ways. Okay, so heve dan et kol ha'adam lechatschut. That's the end of this number 6, and that means judge all people with a scale weighted in his or her favor, right? Judging them by giving them the benefit of the doubt. Even when it's hard to do, if someone who is righteous and seemingly does something evil, assume even perhaps, that's not right, James. You put something else on there. Even if somebody seems to be going astray, and of course it's your obligation to give them the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps even somebody that goes astray, perhaps you can assume that person has already repented and already kind of back in the fold. That's giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. I've got something I want to read to you, which comes from rabbinic literature. I'm going to move this so I don't mess up my controls. Here's a story, and then we'll talk a little bit. The Talmud tells a story about an agricultural worker who spent 3 years working for a landowner. On the eve of Yom Kippur, he went to his employer to collect the wages for the full 3 years, right? He waited that long, 3 years, before he got paid, in order to return home to his wife and children with the payment, right? It's almost Yom Kippur, you got to settle up. The employer claimed to have no money. 3 years this guy worked. The employer says, no money. Give me fruit, said the worker. I have no fruit, the employer said. Let me have some of your land, pleaded the worker, thinking that he could sell it and use the proceeds to pay him. Again, the landowner claimed that this was impossible. Every request for equivalent payment by the worker, animals, pillows, blankets, anything, was met with the same reply, I have none of those things. Brokenhearted and penniless, the worker trudged home. After the holidays, the landowner arrived at the home of his former employee and presented him not only with his wages, but with several mules carrying foods and delicacies as a treat for the worker's family. Now here's the landowner. Tell me, asked the landowner, when I told you I had no money, what did you think? The worker says, I assumed you had invested in merchandise that you were unable to purchase at a good price, answered the worker. Right, so you already bought merchandise, you have no money left. Whoops, hold on a second. Okay, I'm back. And when I said I had no animals, the landowner inquired, what did you think? Oh, I assumed you had hired out your animals, was the reply. Didn't have the animals, you lent them out, nothing you could really do about it, nothing evil about it, you just had lent out your animals, so they weren't available. And the landowner says, and what about my claim that I had no fruit? And the worker said, I assumed that you had not taken the necessary tithes, right? You didn't give the right percentage to the temple and to the priests, and that's how the priests would support themselves, by these gifts. So the worker said, look, I suspected that you didn't tithe your fruit, so you had no fruit available to give me. Fine, says the landowner, but what suspicion entered your mind when I claimed to have no pillows or covers? None at all, said, none at all. I was sure you had so the worker says, I was sure you had consecrated all your property to the temple treasury. So you didn't even have pillows and covers. Pledged the worker. I swear to you, replied the landowner, that it was exactly as you thought. I pledged all my worldly goods to the temple in order that my son merit success in his studies. So he did it for his child, so that God would give him the ability to study and to learn. And so he had nothing left. And it was for a good reason, so that his son could study, but nevertheless, he had no money, nothing he could give them. And yet the worker, as you can see, is giving the landowner the benefit of the doubt in every one of these circumstances. And the landowner says, just as you judged me favorably, so may you be judged in heaven in a favorable manner. The landowner is saying, here's your blessing. God should give you everything you needed, but not before the landowner brought him all this stuff, wages and animals and fruit and pillows and blankets and all of these things. The worker gave him the benefit of the doubt. And even after 3 years of not having his wages, it all came back to him by the virtue of him doing the right thing. Okay, so that's the story. And that is the end of this Mishnah. So I want to open it up to anybody's thoughts. What do you think here? I think there was a chat. There was a chat message. Hold on. Let's see what that was. So Adrian mentioned that could a chaver be a mentor? I don't think that's the understanding of the Mishnah here. A chaver is somebody kind of equal to you, and yes, is able to give you tochecha or rebuke, but as a friend, as somebody equal and in your station, and somebody that you'd want to study with on a regular schedule. The Rav it's more possible, according to the language, that the Rav would be a mentor, right? So make yourself a rabbi. And the plain sense of the language there is that you're making yourself a teacher, right? You're acquiring for yourself a teacher. And that's where the mentorship, I think, comes in. Does that sound reasonable? Can't see Adrian because she walked away from here she is. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on this Mishnah? Harold.
Would you think the landowner might have been selfish, giving everything to his son, not knowing what the outcome would be, even though the worker was looking toward the future and believing that he would get his reward sometime later on?
I think the sense of the text is that giving money so that your child could study is a very high value, perhaps even a higher value than paying your worker. And that's just the sense of this Pirkei Avot. And it says in other places in Jewish law that you can't withhold wages, like even for a day. it is your responsibility to pay them. So that's a later law in the Talmud. So I think the understanding there is that giving money so that your child could study is a huge value in Jewish life. So it's forgivable, I guess, in that sense. At least that's the plain sense of what you have here. Yeah, I would agree. Send your kid to Harvard and pay all this money, and then you can't pay your worker. That's outrageous. I just don't think that's the value that's really being taught here in this Mishnah. That's a good point. All right, anybody else? Let's see how many people we have. 14 people on here. Let's see who else is on here. I'm just gonna look. Okay. All right, anything else? Oh, I see there's more people. Oh, wait a minute, Jay. Did you have something?
Well, it's just an interesting observation. It's just an interesting observation that we're supposed to judge everyone favorably, but when it comes to a judge hearing a case, he or she has to be skeptical and view them as culpable, and be critical and look at it in a very different way than in most situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And it says if they're dealing with judges here, you can't be favorable towards a rich person. You can't be more sympathetic to a poor person. You have to be very neutral. So I think as we're looking at this, it does also say in some of the commentators that even somebody that seems evil, you have to look at carefully and see maybe they've already repented. So it seems to me like they're talking to a student now, not a judge. But clearly above, we saw them, we seem to be saying that the Mishnah understands the person as a judge. But here I think it just makes more sense to me that this is a student. Make a rabbi, get yourself a rabbi or a mentor. Get yourself a friend. They could be Torah scholars that we're talking about because they have such a huge value in study. But it seems like this would be either a regular student or really a spectacular student, but it's all the same value. You have to have a rabbi, you have to have a chavruta partner, and we're heavy dan et kol hadam l'chafzchut. Just seems to be appended here. It doesn't seem to be just for a scholar, but for everybody, that we should judge everybody, giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Rabbi, can you hear Mel Coffey?
I can, Mel. Go ahead.
I think that the worker has some obligation too. He can't just assume that everything's going to stay status quo for 3 years. I think he has an obligation to remind the employer of the employer's obligation. And things change in life. And for a worker to not remind an employer that the employer owes the worker for 3 years, I think is unreasonable.
Right. It's an exaggeration. The Talmud often has stories with wild exaggeration, like 3 years of not getting paid. I mean, that's ridiculous. Nobody's going to agree to that. But I think the Talmud is saying, even if the guy didn't get compensation for 3 years, you still judge the landowner with giving that landowner the benefit of the doubt. So I think that's where the exaggeration comes in, trying to prove a point what it means to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. But of course, I mean, it's outrageous. No one's going to work for 3 years without payment. People shouldn't work 1 month without payment, never mind 3 years. It's outrageous. But you'll see this in stories in the Talmud all the time, incredible exaggeration to try to prove a point. And this is incredible exaggeration. Okay, so Harold Weinstein writes, however, in the current legal system, you are innocent before proven guilty. In context of text, all opinions should be weighed favorably. Yeah, that is the context. Again, I'm not sure it's for a judge who has to be completely unbiased, for poor, for rich, or otherwise. But yes, in our legal system, you have to assume innocence until proven guilty. So in a sense, that's giving everybody the benefit of the doubt also. Okay, are we ready to go on? Let's go on to the next. We're almost to our 30 minutes. Let's go on to the next one quickly. And we might want to come back to it, the next one. This is number 7. Nitai ha'arbeli omer harchek mishachen ra. Ve'al titchaber l'rasha ve'al tityaesh min ha'puraniyut. Nitai the Arbelite used to say, keep a distance from an evil neighbor, do not become attached to the wicked, and do not abandon faith in divine retribution. Okay, so we have to break this up. Keep a distance from an evil neighbor. When I was in 5th grade, I still remember something that a teacher taught me that it seemed kind of crazy at the time. Because part of being in 5th grade is to find friends. And sometimes those friends weren't, so righteous. And the teacher said, keep yourself away from bad friends. It is just not a good idea to be with somebody that's breaking the rules, that's breaking the law, that's treating other people poorly. Even if that person might treat you nicely, and maybe, and even though you might really want friends, you've got to stay away from people that evil neighbor, just somebody that does bad things, that thinks bad thoughts, could even go so far as breaking the law. But nevertheless, even in 5th grade, you've got to be careful who your friends are. I thought that was quite amazing to say to young people, and very wise as young people, as they go through their teenage years, right? Get into groups that they have 2 or 3 friends who are their chaverim, or are their equals and their friends. But as you know, teenagers often go astray. Don't want to treat them poorly, but it happens. And if your friends are doing bad things, you need to find other friends. This is what this is clearly saying. Harchek mishachen ra. I'm reading the notes. Just stay away from them. Make sure you don't connect with them. Ve'al titchaber l'rasha. Again, stay away from an evil neighbor, and from connecting up with an evil person. Kind of saying the same thing. Those who are evil, you have to stay away from. Ra means evil. Rasha means an evil person. So stay away from the evil. Stay away from an evil person. Same kind of advice. Very good advice. Thoughtful. And there you have it. So the last piece I want to talk about a little bit more on Thursday. We'll just go over it very briefly. Ve'al tit ya'esh min ha'pur anut. So he says, don't abandon faith in divine retribution. I want to leave you with this, just to think about. Okay. What he's saying here is that if you are evil, or if you know of someone who's evil, that's the person you want to stay away from. If you know someone is evil, and you're seeing that, don't think that there's not going to be a consequence to that evil action. There's going to be a consequence. That consequence could be divine retribution, which might be in the world to come, or it could be retribution in that person's own life. Right? I know people that do bad things, that it's actually the doing of the bad things that get them stuck, to get them turning to the wrong way of life, and just that can be retribution, right? Evil brings on its own retribution just because they're living in an evil sort of way, right? Somebody, in a bad neighborhood shoots somebody and kills them, right? There's going to be retribution in this world, and it's a stain, right? It's a scar on that person to have committed murder, and that stain itself can be a kind of retribution. And I'm going to leave you with that. Any thoughts about that before we leave? And then we're definitely going to take that up again on Thursday, because that's a very important, very interesting and important thought. Any thoughts?
Mel Coffee has.
Got Elena, Eileen, Naomi, Tina. Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Who decides
David.
what's good and bad?
What's that?
Who decides what is good and bad or wicked? Is that based on Torah? Is it based on personal feelings? What may be good or bad to me may not be good or bad to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think you've got a very good point there. Determining whether somebody is bad is subjective, I guess, from the point of view of a human being making that determination. And yes, there are things that that people do that other people see as, offensive, abusive, and that's not necessarily a widely held belief. We're reading about our president every single day. And I know people that support the president, everything he does and says. So talking about injecting Clorox into your veins, I think is outrageous. But on the other hand, other people see that, I don't know, he was being sarcastic, he was being, he didn't mean what he said. That can justify virtually any action. So I guess in a sense, these kinds of judgments are subjective, but they're not subjective to God. In a sense, God has a midat hadin, has a very refined, divine, I guess you could say, way of understanding people's behavior. So I don't know, when your behavior comes before God, you're going to have to answer to that. And that's in the world to come. But I think we still need to take a look at issues of retribution in a sense, punishment in a sense, coming from one's own behavior and the scars that creates. Now, there's also, we'll talk about this on Thursday, but there's also just a final thought to think about. Wait, I'm going to wait till Thursday. It's good stuff. Too good to just jump at right now. All right, any final thoughts, Tina?
Can you hear Mel Coffee?
Got to unmute. Mel, hold on just a second. Tina, unmute. See if I can do that for you.
I did it.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Here. I'm sure this is a question that many people ask, but about the scar. It seems like so many people, such as our president, can get away with so many evil deeds. And let's say someone kills somebody, or like a Nazi that doesn't come to trial until he's in his 90s. Why do you feel that they can get away with those scars and those evil deeds so long, do you feel that they'll get even greater retribution in the world to come?
Well, that's a very good point that I wanted to wait until Thursday, but just something to think about. We have the
Okay.
problem of evil in the world. And it's described in Hebrew as Ra v'tov lo, that a person is evil and good things come to him. And tov v'ra lo, that a good person can have bad things happen to them. And it's cannot be understood. Right? It's like beyond us. Does God understand it? Don't know. If you have this sense that there's a world to come and God makes judgments on your soul in this world to come, that's how the rabbis understood the problem of evil, of an evil person that seems to have a perfectly good life. You have a Nazi who is a murderer and goes to South America and has a good life. It doesn't make any sense to us. And so the rabbis in the Talmud would say, yeah, but he's going to burn in eternal damnation. That's the only way they could really understand it. But I think that's something that we're going to have to challenge, and we're going to have to do it in our next session.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll definitely get back to Ra v'tov lo.
Have a good day, Rabbi.
Okay, everybody, see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
See you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Can you turn this on?
Gloria and Mel, it's Eileen. Hi.
Hi, honey. Where are you?
I don't have my camera, but I want to say hi to you guys.
Oh, how are you feeling?
Okay, how are you guys doing?
We're fine, thank you.
Good. I'll see you on Thursday then with our class.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
I had difficulty in